Howdy there, Isaac here. So, this is an idea I've had for a long time, almost since this channel was created. For anyone who remembers, Tokyo Ghoul is one of my favorite anime and manga series. I simply love every facet of it, and consider its writing phenomenal. That said, this story will be dark, far darker than my Izuku Uchiha series. This series may have long pauses due to it being a more delicate one to craft. It may also be narrated by Monet in other parts. I don't want to spoil anything, but there are some disturbing and quite graphic depictions. If you can't handle anything that comes up, click off and go watch something more wholesome. This is a horror story, dare I say, a horror experience. So sit back and relax as we get started. What if Izuku was a ghoul? The story starts now. Ever since Izuku Midori was born, he had been a peculiar child. He was born with teeth and couldn't eat any fruits or vegetables, while preferring his meat almost raw. The boy had a fascination with people and blood, even watching horror movies that contained gory or bloody scenes instead of regular children's shows. This worried his mother, who thought it was weird to have a child that ate only meat. As Izuku grew, so did his appetite and his fascination with horror. Luckily, there was one saving grace. The boy idolized a hero named All Might, and often said he wished to become a hero himself. This slightly calmed Inko, and a couple years went by just like this, up until Izuku's 4th birthday. That was when his father got into an accident. A building somewhere in California had collapsed, just as Izuku's father had been walking by. The only pieces of his body that were recovered was his left arm and leg, only identifiable due to the wallet found in his pants. He was buried in America along with 40 other individuals who had lost their lives, though Inko and Izuku couldn't attend due to the cost of doing so. With Izuku's growing appetite and his father no longer supporting them, Inko had to get a job. Luckily, she could work while Izuku went to school. As time went on, Inko would have to take 2 jobs to support herself and Izuku, who, at the age of 5, discovered he had a very interesting quirk. One day, while Bakugo and company were bullying Izuku, he discovered his body was able to heal itself, and that his senses had greatly improved, including his sense of smell. Not only that, the children in his school smelled good, almost like the dinners his mother served at home. This would lead to Izuku biting one of his classmates, having to be pried off by staff due to him having a surprising amount of strength. Luckily for everyone involved, Izuku didn't draw much blood, and the kid didn't require any stitches. The school did suspend Izuku though, telling Inko she needed to take him to get some sort of quirk counseling before he could attend class regularly, sending a workbook for the child to study in the meantime. Inko would normally do so, but with the little amount of money she made, it would be impossible to have Izuku visit any good quirk counselors. This caused her to be under even more stress, especially since she now had to leave her child home alone. A week later, while Inko was preparing meals for the next few days, Izuku would walk into the kitchen.
Mommy, am I bad?
Inko would turn around, wondering the same thing. He had always been a strange child, but she didn't believe he was a bad kid at all, just misguided a bit. She'd do her best to raise him right, to turn her child into a normal one.
Of course not, sweetie.
Inko said, placing her hand on his cheek.
Why would you ask me that?
Izuku would point out of the kitchen window, towards the nearby park.
I went to the park when you were at work today, and Ka-chan was there. They started calling me names, and Ka-chan even said his mom told him not to play with me anymore.
Inko saw the solemn look Izuku had on his face, and she knew those kids probably did more than just call him names. His quirk had simply healed all the evidence. She caressed her child's cheek and hugged him tightly.
No matter what everyone else says, you're my little angel, and no angel could ever be a bad person.
Izuku would nod softly, not speaking a single word, but Inko could feel his body shaking as the child cried softly. After this brief interaction, Inko felt Izuku relax a little more and hug her back. The two would share this embrace for a little longer before Inko would say that she needed to finish cooking. Deku would walk off to his room, going to watch All Might save people for a little while, now feeling as if he could be a hero once again. Inko would go back to cooking, trying to think of ways to help her son. She realized he needed friends, but couldn't help but think he would go on to bite someone again. In the end, she simply decided to pick up a few books for her son, attempting to help him cope with his loneliness through the world of literature. This, however, wouldn't stop what was possibly meant to be. A year would go by with Izuku staying out of trouble, though that didn't mean there wasn't trouble brewing at all. Izuku's appetite had grown almost tenfold, and even after eating, he often told Inko that he felt unsatisfied. There was never any malice or bratty tones in his voice. He would simply hold his stomach and say it felt like he needed more. This worried Inko, since she could barely afford to feed him now, and he was only 6. She didn't want him to go hungry, but she also felt as if he were eating far more than the average child. She worried for her peculiar son. As the months went by, Izuku developed a sickness, one which caused him to have massive cramps in his stomach and made him fairly weak. It was almost as if he were violently malnourished, though he lost no weight and was eating as much meat as usual. Inko would take Deku to the doctors, with everyone saying he seemed fairly healthy despite his sickly appearance, and that there was seemingly no cause for this illness. In the end, Izuku was prescribed placebos, since the doctors thought it was all psychosomatic for some reason. Oh, and they recommended feeding Izuku a more balanced diet. The pills helped nothing though, and Izuku's situation only worsened since he'd regurgitate anything with vegetables or fruits. Inko hated leaving her child home alone, especially when he was so sickly, but she needed to work to support him as well. All of this extra stress caused Inko to begin growing gray hairs and gain weight way earlier than she would have otherwise. One day, while his mother was out, Izuku would venture to the fridge, hardly able to walk at this point, and begin to devour every piece of meat within it, raw or not, skipping the vegetables his mother tried to make him eat. In total, Izuku ate the meat that was supposed to last him and his mother for around 4 days. This gave him enough strength to walk around some more, but his hunger was still far from satisfied. He remembered the smell of people, how the smell of steak, pork, and fish had dulled in the past year. Hell, even his mother smelled like a big juicy steak at this point. It took everything the child had not to bite his mother sometimes. He should stop himself now, but the hunger was too bad, too painful to take. He needed to eat. Izuku would grab his jacket and walk out of his apartment, going towards the nearby park. There, playing near the slide, was Bakugo and his 2 lackeys. Even from several meters away, he could smell them, the scent making his mouth water. Izuku knew this was bad. He wanted to be an angel, but this scent, it was just too much to resist. Izuku walked over and greeted the children, his eyes those of a predator fixated on its prey. Bakugo would ask what a freak was doing at the park, saying it was only for normal children. As Bakugo took a step closer to Izuku, his scent would send the ghoul into a euphoric state. This person smelt so good. Without thinking, Izuku would pounce on his prey, taking a chunk out of Bakugo before being blasted away. All 3 of the children would quickly run away, leaving Izuku there, alone. The child wiped the blood from his mouth, realizing what he just did. Why did he bite Kachan? And why'd he eat a piece of him? This wasn't what heroes do, and it certainly isn't what angels do, but it did finally make the pain in his stomach go away. Izuku would run home, hiding in his room for the next few hours, hoping his mother wouldn't find out what had happened. He hid underneath the bed. That way it'd be harder for his mother to find him. This only allowed him to see her feet when she entered his room, a pair of black boots waiting outside the hallway.
Izuku, I know you're in here.
His mother shouted, her voice clearly panicked.
Come out right now. Do you have any idea what you just did?
He did. Of course he did, but he didn't want to get in trouble either. Izuku stayed underneath the bed and kept quiet, causing Inko to search his room. Once she found Izuku under the bed, she would grab his arm and pull him out roughly.
Why didn't you come out when I told you to? Do you have any idea what you did? You really hurt someone today, Izuku.
The panicked tone in Inko's voice would cause Izuku to wince. He knew he was bad. He knew he messed up. He just wanted all of this to go away. He wanted to act as if nothing had ever happened, to just be her little angel once again. Ma'am, with all due respect, it might be best if you just let the social worker handle this. Yelling could make things worse, said a man behind Inko. Izuku looked over to see a police officer, his hand dangerously close to his gun. Was it really this serious? All Izuku did was bite someone. He couldn't remember exactly where, but he was pretty sure it was just Kachan's arm. Inko would look down, shade casted over her eyes, making the bags under them appear even darker.
Of course, officer.
Inko put her son down before walking out of the room. Izuku attempted to follow her, only to be blocked by a nicely dressed woman who spoke softly. This woman would keep Izuku within the room and question him on what had just happened at the park. Over the course of an hour, Izuku would calm down and answer all the ladies' questions, with the police officer staying there and watching him the whole time. While the nature of Izuku's crime was severe, he wasn't arrested due to his age. After a few more questions, Izuku and Inko would be left in the house alone. Hours went by, with Inko not leaving for her second job, which is where Izuku realized just how bad he had messed up. Izuku would get the courage to finally face his mother, who was sitting down in the living room, watching TV.
Mommy? Are you okay?
Izuku asked, very slowly approaching his mother. Without turning to face him, Inko would answer,
No, I'm not, Izuku. You hurt another child very badly today. He's in the hospital because of you, and now both of us are in a lot of trouble.
The edge in her voice made Izuku freeze in place. His mother had never sounded like this, and it was frightening. Just how bad did Izuku hurt his friend? It couldn't really be that bad, could it? After several moments of silence, Izuku would finally speak once more.
I was just hungry. Of course you were hungry, Izuku. You're always hungry. You were so hungry you'd hurt someone.
Inko finally snapped, turning towards her son and grabbing him by the shoulder.
Why would you hurt someone like that? I've done everything I could to help you, but you just never change, do you? Why won't you just be a normal kid?
Inko would bend Izuku over her knee, beginning to spank him harshly, a grotesque look of anger twisting her once kind face. Izuku would begin to cry, but he stayed still, taking the harsh punishment. In his mind, this is what he deserved for being a bad child. If he took this punishment, maybe he would then be his mother's angel once more. Maybe he could get the comfort he wanted, comfort he severely needed. But the comfort never came, as Izuku soon passed out, though he didn't know from what. He'd wake up in the morning, unable to remember what had happened when Inko spanked him, only knowing his clothes were stained a dark brown. Several days would go by, with Izuku not seeing his mother, not even when she was supposed to be home from work. There was always food in the fridge, though, so Izuku knew she had been there. Probably when he was asleep, though. This caused little Deku to attempt staying up, waiting for his mother to come home. Even though he knew she probably hated him, he needed her. Needed to have any sort of comfort from her, despite knowing she'd probably show the opposite. But it seemed like the more Izuku tried to stay up, the more sleepy he felt. The hunger soon came back, and even stronger than before. As the days went by, the pain and hunger increased, causing his mind to start slipping once more. Sleep came less and less, causing his thoughts to be muddled and disorganized. Despite him staying up far later, he never noticed his mother enter the house. After a couple more days of agony, Izuku would finally get up from his bed and begin to walk towards his front door. He didn't care if he got in trouble anymore. He needed to eat. But no, he needed to be good. If he was good, maybe Mother would show him kindness once again. But he felt as if he'd die without food at this point. He needed to eat. No, he couldn't. Both he and his mother would get in trouble if he bit someone again. Well, maybe he could eat all of them. Then nobody would tell. What? No, that's wrong. A good person wouldn't do that. A hero wouldn't do that. An angel certainly wouldn't either. But he wasn't a good person already. He was a bad boy. Mother even said so. But he... Izuku would open his front door, his mouth drooling even without the scent of food being present. Despite the war being waged in his thoughts, Izuku continued walking outside. While his mind wasn't made up, his body certainly was. The first whiff of food quickly made Izuku's mind go blank, causing him to rush out of the apartment building. Food, food, food. He needed to eat. He'd die if he didn't. He was simply just trying to survive. That was all. He wasn't bad. He was just hungry. He needed to eat like everyone else. And whoever was nearby smelt good. They smelt like how his mother's cooking smelled when he was younger. Whoever they were, he needed to have them. Izuku ran out into the night, finally encountering the person down the street from his apartment building. He had no time to find out who they were, simply pouncing on them, biting their neck, and tearing into their chest with his claws. As he began to devour the chunk of flesh he tore off, he heard a sickening sound.
Izuku.
The person gurgled as blood filled their mouth and lungs. In the moment, Izuku ignored this, continuing to feed on the poor woman. The sounds of flesh being torn and bones cracking filled the dimly lit alleyway as Izuku tore into the chest cavity. Blood poured out into the ground and soaked into both parties' clothing, a scene from a horror movie playing out, only this time it was real. As he fed, his sanity began to return, and the realization of what he was doing slowly set in. Most of the torso was gone by now, but the face of the person was intact. Izuku looked at them with trepidation, seeing the smiling face of his mother looking up into the night sky, a single tear soaked into her cheek.
No, you're not.
Tears would begin to stream down his face, him burying it in the shoulder of his deceased mother, trying to get any sort of comfort from her. His mother couldn't be gone. She just couldn't be.
Mommy, please wake up, please. You can't be dead. You just can't.
Izuku yelled, trying to shake her awake. She couldn't be gone, not now, and not because of him. No. He needed her to tell him he was a good boy, to call him her little angel still, to show him comfort, to praise him for becoming a normal child like she always wanted. She needed to be alive, to just wake up. After hours of crying and trying to wake up his mother, Izuku would finally stop, standing up and walking off to his apartment in a daze. The whole way home, Izuku felt numb, as if there was nothing left inside him. No tears left to cry, or sadness to even feel. But as he walked into the house, the memories flooded his mind once more, reminding him of the flesh he had eaten. No, no, he didn't eat his mother. He couldn't have. Izuku ran to the restroom to throw up, trying to rid himself of both memories and the physical reminders within him, but nothing came up. Of all the foods he had thrown up before, he couldn't throw this up? What was wrong with him? And then he spotted it. His reflection in the water. His eyes were pitch black, aside from the red pupils that now swam within him. And behind him were wings. They were red and fleshy, but they looked just like the wings of an... Izuku remembered the words his mother told him long ago. He was her little